Practically speaking, no one does. No one forgets the past. No one doesn't live with a historical narrative for how they got here. The question is whether or not the narrative's right or helpful or accurate. But actually, we all do. Like you and I, if you've seen the movie Inception, there's this lovely moment where Leonardo DiCaprio is trying to teach Ellen Page about how you plant things in dreams, and goes, actually, in a dream, you never get, how did you get to this place? You never ask that question in a dream. You just find yourself somewhere. But actually, the reason you know it's not real life is because there's no backstory. Because in real life, we all tell a backstory. That's how we make sense of things. And even if it's very inaccurate, even if it's, well, the world, used to be completely Christian and everyone died of plague and ate turnips and burned witches, and then Europeans went, hey, let's discover knowledge, and everyone started reading and writing, and now we're here. It's a terrible version of the story, but it is at least a story that we have. So I don't think anyone doesn't have a sense of the past. Instead, what happens is people have very often either very simplified or very inaccurate tellings of the past. And if that happens, then this is a George Orwell thing that he writes in 1984. He's just lived through the Second World War and writes, I think, one of the greatest novels ever written, to describe a world in which people with power control your understanding of the past. Because Orwell says, yes, if you control the past, you control if you control the present, you control people's view of the past. And if you control their view of the past, you can control their future. Because you can say, don't you realize that if people, in the past, when people have believed X, it has led them to do Y, therefore never do Y, or never believe X. And that happens all the time in the modern world. Don't you realize when Christians used to rule the world, they burned everybody? Or that sort of, The Handmaid's Tale would be an example. This is the kind of thing Christians, it's an implicit historical appeal, but a bogus story that leads people to constrain the choices you might make in the present and say, we don't want that kind of future. And you do that often through controlling the narrative. And by the way, Christians do the same. And there are bad Christian tellings of that story as well. We used to be an upstanding Christian nation, and then these terrible secularists took over, and now look where we are, and it's all caused this. And you think, it wouldn't read that way if you were an African American, or whatever it is. So actually, there's all kinds of versions of the story where people now, with influence, this is what Orwell is saying, try and control the past, because they know that if you do control the past, the kind of decisions people make now and the future they have will be under your power as well. So I think, in that sense, an accurate, or at least an integrated, coherent historical narrative is actually a really important thing to some degree, for all of us as disciples, to understand that that's not a fair telling of how we got where we are. And if we swallow that rather thin account of where we are, we could end up making some really bad decisions and end up jeopardizing our future as well. So that's why I think we all have a backstory. The question is it a good one? And obviously part of what I'm hoping to do in this book is to provide an integrated, coherent one that might draw some threads together better than some versions of the story that are out there today.